Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Reach out to me for pricing. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a dive watch by the Reborn Angelus concern. Historically famous for chronographs and calendar watches, Angelus reemerged under the aegis of lug-to-lug as the super upscale brand within Arnold & Son. That requires a little bit of explanation. Lug-to-lug is a Swiss movement manufacturer owned by Citizen. It owns Arnold & Son, which makes somewhere between 700 and 1,000 watches a year. Angelus is under Arnold & Son as the ultra-luxury brand that typically makes 1/10 as many watches as Arnold. And this 2018 limited edition in grade 5 titanium is a 25-piece series. So this watch is called the U50 Diver Tourbillon, and it lives up to its name. 45 millimeters in diameter in grade 5 titanium. It is 12.8 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, 54.3 millimeters with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see it fits nicely. Normally, I wouldn't say a 45 fits nicely on my wrist, and given that it is over 54 millimeters, you must wonder what I'm talking about, but you can see this watch, the further I get away from the camera, the more obvious it is that this is actually a great fit. And so if your watch is thin but broad, you're going to love the way this fits, as it's made almost entirely of sapphire, titanium, and rubber. And I think you can wear this watch on a wrist my size, so 16 centimeters circumference and up. Now, because it is 12.8 millimeters thick, it's only a little bit thicker than a Rolex Sub or GMT. With a sloped bezel, it will slide underneath the cuff, though it's not really a dress watch. And then you can see down the barrel, just to prove my point, the lugs are definitely out to the edge of my wrist, but it looks and feels just fine. It's a sporting style. The strap is custom and fully integrated. It matches the slope of the lugs and the curvature of the case. There is a little bit of virtual flare or stiffness here, but the strap is so soft it's not a major concern. There's some definition molded into it along with the Angelus logo, and then you can see on the bottom we've got yet another Angelus logo and monogram. We have a buckle that is Angelus branded with a combination of polish and satin, and you can see it has been assembled in a fashion that is highly technical and mirrors the architecture of the case. It features assembly screws. Unnecessary, but pretty cool. The case is the same way, highly modular with many different pieces. Grade 5 titanium is lighter than steel and hypoallergenic, same as grade 2, but grade 5 tie is more scratch resistant than standard steels. Very light on the wrist. This 300-meter watch also includes a helium escape valve for saturation divers, so when internal pressure exceeds external by 2 to 3 bar, this little valve will automatically open and release any helium that might have built up during your dive. The watch is 300 meters water resistant. It does feature a unidirectional rotating ratcheting bezel inside. So you line up the Angelus A with the minute hand, and now you have an impromptu 0 to 60 minute count up timer, which I often find is more useful than a chronograph. If you're timing something less than an hour, it's just easier to read the scale on a dive bezel. And a lot of times you're timing something less than an hour but longer than 30 minutes, which can be tough if you're not really paying attention to your 30-minute chronograph. Plus, it's one less thing to maintain down the road. Tourbillons are not cheap to upkeep, but at the same time, a tourbillon chronograph would be more expensive still. Give me a dive bezel any day of the week. Now, because this is a diver, you want to know, how is it loomed? Quite well, in fact. All 3 hands are loomed. And you can see that the second hand is visible and in motion, so you know your watch is running in the dark. However, you would also have noticed that the bezel itself is not loomed, so you need to have some degree of ambient light to use this dive bezel. Now, moving inboard, this one, of course, a combination of blue and yellow. We also have individual applique indices on top of a nickel anthracite track for reading the minutes and the hours. You can see that the minute hash marks are all in yellow. And we've got a fascinating set of colors and tones and contrasts. Now, the movement is the A300, and as you can see, it is fully open worked. It's skeletal. Manual wind, it has a 4 Hz beat rate and a 60-hour power reserve. The beat rate in this application is actually higher at 4 Hz than Angelus's conventional dress watch Tourbillon 3 Hz. The higher beat rate intended to make the watch more shock resistant. Now, you can see that it's adjusted to 5 positions, which is the high horology and chronometer standard. So this is a tourbillon designed to actually achieve better timekeeping than a standard Swiss lever. We have 23 pivot jewels. We have a large open mainspring barrel, so you can see the coiling of the mainspring, and as you become more familiar with the watch, you'll begin to understand it as a power reserve in its own right. You can tell by the coiling of the mainspring how much of the 60-hour reserve is still intact. Now, we do have a flying tourbillon on the dial side, and I'll get the minute hand out of the way so you can see it better. All crowns are screwed down. The flying tourbillon is probably the single best finished piece of the watch, as the combination of bevels and satination and mirror polish look upscale and opulent. Now, it's a flying tourbillon because there's no upper bridge to block your view, and it is a 1-minute tourbillon, so while we have a 60-second display, the tourbillon can also operate as your seconds hand. Taking a look at the keyless works, we have a combination of mirrored beveling, surface satination, and then recesses with media blast. It's really quite well finished, and alongside the tourbillon, that's probably the single best finished assembly of the watch. We have ADLC, or amorphous diamond-like carbon, blackening all the bridges to provide nice contrast with the silver steel and silver wheel components. A really nice pop of contrast alongside the yellow and the blue. And of course, on the reverse side, we have solarization on the crown wheel core with a black polished surround. This lovely satinated and beveled click spring, which has a wonderfully delicate arc over to the click itself. And then all of the train wheels are visible. You can see that the bridges have been evacuated. It's a big, open, airy, and gorgeous movement that is designed to blend the elegance and heritage of the tourbillon regulator with the durability and utility of a dive watch. Maybe a combination that's not strictly necessary, but it is a lot of fun. You can see that we have an Angelus logo that's been silk screened onto the underside of the sapphire. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.